Picture this. You're standing in your parents' living room, laptop open, hands trembling. You've got proof of concept, 8 companies ready to commit, a working prototype. Let me take you back to where it all began. Austin, Texas. A perfect brick house that looked warm from the outside, but felt ice cold on the inside. I wasn't the golden child. That role belonged to my younger sister, Rosie. When I turned 16, I begged for a used car so I wouldn't have to take the bus in 100-degree Texas heat. Unnecessary, they said. You're responsible enough to manage without it. But when Rosie turned 16, there were fairy lights, a backyard party, and a brand new car with a giant bow rolling down the driveway. I stood there clapping, swallowing the sting. When I wanted $500 for a coding program, my mother said, "No need to waste money. Learn online." 2 weeks later, Rosie was flown to New York for a $12,000 tacting camp, with new luggage and a celebratory dinner. Everyone called her talented. Nobody asked what I dreamed of. It wasn't just about money. It was about visibility. I won first place in a statewide science competition and walked through the door trembling with pride. The living room was packed with relatives gushing over Rosie's ballet photos. "That's nice, honey," my mother said, glancing at my certificate before turning back to brag about Rosie's costume. By evening, my award was buried under a stack of magazines. I learned early. Don't expect anyone to clap for me. So I became independent by necessity. I cooked my own meals, handled my own homework, raised myself. When I earned a partial scholarship to a prestigious university and packed to leave, my parents reminded me about the high cost of living. Meanwhile, Rosie got a farewell party for her expensive arts program. Buds, I told myself. Once I prove myself in the real world, things will change. Once I have something solid, they'll finally see me. I was so wrong. After graduation, I entered the tech world like I was drowning, and coding was oxygen. Long nights. Relentless deadlines. No safety net. But for the first time, my effort mattered. 2 years later, I had $40,000 saved. Every penny scraped from overtime, careful budgeting, and saying no to every luxury. Then everything clicked. I spotted a glaring gap in the construction industry, built a prototype, and got 8 companies willing to commit once the product was ready. This wasn't a fantasy. It was viable, real. Then came the betrayal. A few months later, while I was debugging code past midnight in my tiny apartment, my mother called, breathless with excitement. "Rosie's starting a luxury event company in Dallas. We're helping her launch." Helping her. The phrase echoed dangerously. Then I heard the real number. A $125,000 loan, a brand new BMW for brand image, an office space in a trendy district, designer outfits, lavish networking parties. All the things that were too risky for me were suddenly worth investing in for her. I stared at the wall for a long time after that call, my chest tight, my vision blurry. This wasn't favoritism anymore. This was a decision that told me exactly where I stood. In that quiet apartment, lit only by the glow of my computer screen, something shifted inside me. Not anger, not yet. Just clarity. Sharp, cold, undeniable. If I wanted a future, I would have to build it alone. Once I accepted I was on my own, I made the hardest decision of my life. I mortgaged my small San Jose condo and combined that loan with the $40,000 I had saved. It was terrifying, signing papers that tied my entire future to a fragile idea. But fear felt cleaner than disappointment. At least fear belonged to me. I rented a tiny office in an aging industrial building, hired Miguel, a fresh graduate with sharp instincts, and Rachel, who handled clients with warmth and grit. 2. The 3 of us sat around a dented thrift store table, mapping features and cold calling potential customers. Reality hit hard. We worked 18-hour days, ate cheap sandwiches and instant noodles, coded until our wrists ached. Some days the app broke in ways I couldn't explain. Then came the worst blow. A mid-sized construction company that promised a major contract backed out at the last minute. That contract had been our lifeline. Without it, our budget evaporated. I sat in the dark office long after the others had gone home, staring at the nearly empty spreadsheet. Rain tapped against the cracked window. For a moment, I wondered if my parents had been right. Was it really too risky? But then, I remembered the sound of my father folding his newspaper. The flat tone dismissing me while saving every ounce of faith for Rosie. Something inside me hardened. I refused to fail in a way that would prove them right. Jess. When we were at the brink, an unexpected email appeared. A construction company in Sacramento wanted to try our software for a year. It wasn't huge, but it was real, steady, legitimate revenue. When we signed it, all three of us sat on the office floor eating dollar pizza, laughing and crying at the same time. While BuildFlow slowly regained its footing, news from Austin began to trickle in. Rosie's luxury event company was collapsing. Her expenses ballooned, her client list evaporated, and the BMW she flaunted everywhere was eventually repossessed. My parents were sinking fast, and for the first time, they started looking in my direction. The first call came on a Thursday evening, just as I finished a meeting about a new BuildFlow update. My phone buzzed again and again until I finally picked up. My mother's voice trembled. "Ayla, we need your help. The bank is threatening to take the house. If you could send $100,000, we can fix part of the debt." For a moment, I didn't breathe. Fourth. The next week, the calls were non-stop. Messages stacked up. Rosie texted, paragraphs dripping with entitlement. "You're the only one who can fix this. You owe us. Stop being selfish." But nothing prepared me for what happened next. The day they showed up at my door. It was a warm autumn afternoon in San Jose when the doorbell rang repeatedly, urgently. I expected a delivery, maybe a neighbor, stand. When I opened the door, my parents stood there with Rosie by their side. My father looked stern, my mother tired, Rosie defiant with crossed arms. "We need to talk," my father said, brushing past me before I even invited him in. They settled on my couch, visibly uncomfortable in my small condo. My mother began gently, as if softening me up. "Ayla, what happened with Rosie's company? No one could have predicted it. She just needs time." "We all do." I said nothing. My father leaned forward. "You have the ability to help. All we're asking is that you sell this place. Use the money to save the family." Rosie finally spoke, her tone thick with accusation. "You know, I didn't mean for things to fall apart, but you're doing well. Why can't you do something for us for once?" That word, once, nearly made me laugh. I drew a steady breath. For once, all your life you've been given everything. Ballet classes, camps, cars, a $125,000 loan. And when I asked for $70,000 after years of working, planning, building, you said it was too risky. Do you hear yourselves? Rosie rolled her eyes. That was different. I stared at her. How? Explain the difference. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. My father cut in. We believed in her dream, and I didn't. My voice remained even, but it vibrated in the air. When I asked for $70,000, I had a working prototype, clients willing to sign contracts, a plan, everything you preach about responsibility. I lived it. But you looked me in the face and said, "It's too risky." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We didn't want you to struggle." I held her gaze. I struggled anyway. The room was silent, air thick enough to cut. I continued, my words slow and deliberate. When Rosie wanted a BMW to look successful, you borrowed an impossible amount of money without question. When her company failed, you shielded her from consequences. When the debt grew, you still found ways to blame bad luck. But when I built something real, when I fought for every inch of this life, you barely acknowledged it. My father shifted uncomfortably. We trusted you to take care of yourself. I nodded once. That's exactly the difference. You trusted me to survive alone. You trusted her to be saved at every turn. Rosie huffed defensively. You're being dramatic. This is family. Families help each other. I looked at her with a kind of sadness I hadn't expected. Families also recognize effort. They acknowledge sacrifice. They don't demand their children destroy the very things they built. My father's voice sharpened. So that's it. You'll let us lose everything. Hers. Words hit me hard, but not in the way he intended. For a moment, I saw the scared version of them, afraid of losing their home, their pride. The image they'd spent years maintaining through Rosie. But then I remembered myself. The nights I coded until dawn. The meals I skipped. The condo I fought to keep. And the voice that finally answered was steady and unbroken. I'm sorry you're struggling, I said, but I am not selling my home. My mother sobbed. Rosie scoffed. My father shook his head. They waited for me to crumble, to apologize, to explain. But instead I gave them the only answer I owed. No, it came out quiet, but it carried the weight of every year I spent being overlooked. Every apology I swallowed, every dream dismissed. Rosie surged to her feet. Oh, heartless. I didn't flinch. No, I'm finally done being your backup plan. My father's face hardened. You'll regret this. I walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped aside. I already spent a lifetime regretting things that weren't mine to carry. Slowly, stiffly, they stood, They walked past me, each step echoing the end of something I had tried so long to fix. My mother paused in the doorway, her eyes pleading for a version of me that no longer existed. I didn't speak. I didn't apologize. I simply closed the door. It clicked shut, soft, certain, final. Then I leaned against it, letting the silent condo settle around me. Tears gathered, fell, then stopped, not because I wasn't hurting, but because I had finally chosen myself. And for the first time in my life, choosing myself didn't feel selfish. It felt right. In the 6 months that followed, everything settled into a strange, quiet distance. I didn't block my parents, but the calls stopped. The texts stopped. Even the guilt stopped. Order remained, were occasional updates from acquaintances in Austin. Updates I listened to without reacting. The red brick house I grew up in was eventually mortgaged, then listed for sale. My father pulled from his retirement early. My mother spent more time at church than at home. Rosie moved in with her boyfriend, posting carefully curated photos that tried and failed to hide the fallout. Meanwhile, build flows surged forward. We signed multiple long-term contracts, doubled our team, and moved into a brighter office in a busier part of town. I left my small condo for a quiet rental house in Palo Alto, with a tiny garden where I could breathe, think, and simply exist without walking on emotional eggshells. Some nights I sat outside with a cup of coffee, listening to the distant hum of the neighborhood. The pain didn't disappear, but it softened, and in its place grew something steadier, something I had fought years to earn. The certainty that choosing myself was not abandonment. It was survival. In the end, saying no didn't break my family. It simply revealed what was already cracked. I walked away from the guilt, the expectations, the years of being the dependable one who never deserved investment. And by choosing myself, I built a life defined not by approval, but by peace. If you've ever had to set a boundary that shook your world, tell me where you're listening from. 2. Your story matters more than you think. And if mine resonated with you, stay subscribed, and let's keep healing through the truth together.